Kim, I'd like to talk about Daniel's journey post-injury. Kim, can you take me back to when you first learnt Dan had his accident?
It was 2004. I guess you got that telephone call that no one wants to get in the middle of the night. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. My eldest son rang me and he said that Daniel was involved in a car accident and he'd broken his leg. And I went to the Royal Adelaide. We sat there with his friends and then we learned that Daniel may be in a wheelchair, that he may be a paraplegic, and then as the night went on, then we learned that it was worse than that. It was the worst scenario, so yeah.
How did Dan cope with that?
In the initial stages, he was heavily sedated. He had a full mask on, tubes in his mouth, so he couldn't converse with us, and I wondered, sitting with him, if he...
It's okay.
How he felt about going on, and we watching when he come to and he could actually converse. The other problem we had was watching that SATS machine to see if he could breathe on his own, because he looked like he'd have to be on a respirator. So we were watching that intently, as he was, and there was one point when the alarm went off and it got really bad, and I looked at him. And Jesus. And I could tell he wanted to live. So yeah, we just had to get him through that early part. Really, at the end of the day, I think it was just coming to terms with the disability at that early stage. But finding a care agency, our legal advice was to also go with someone that was large enough to accommodate someone like Daniel, who virtually, at that stage, he needed 28 hours care a day. So it's the double up of carers to get him in and out, and the reliability factor, his care factor was paramount at that stage, and that's why we ended up going with a company you were with at that stage. We felt they were the best without being too restrictive with any of his care.
So for anybody that has acquired their disability, going through rehab, what are some of the things, if you had something to say to them, what would it be?
While they're at rehab, it's perseverance and support. That's because that's all you've got to give, and it's being educated, it's finding out, and then it has to be the help from carers and agencies that you can talk to. As I said, I wasn't a big G for social workers and things like that, but when you're going through this, even as a family and as Daniel, you need that support.
So given the journey that you've been on and being so instrumental in Dan's life, you were the constant in his life, would you do anything different?
I probably wouldn't have had an argument with him 3 weeks before Christmas last year if I could turn back time. But like I said, life never goes the way you want it to. No, I don't think I could change everything. It was the journey that we were on, and I think we had to go through each one of them to make the decisions we did towards the end. You know, I did everything that I could, I think.
Well, I think one of the most privileged parts of my career is journeying with people, and then they come back into your life like you have, and I'm very grateful of that.
Well, you know, it's funny, when I think back to where I was the day that I rang you, and you being with a reasonable size organisation, when you're going through options and you feel like you don't have an option left, it's a pretty bleak place to be with Daniel. And then once I spoke to you, I'll never forget how that made not only me feel, but Daniel feel that we have an option, that he's not going to be put in an old folks home. Before that, I just didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to manage it. So it all sort of transpired from there. It all went on from there.